Ibrahim Traoré, who is sounding the alarm about a danger many have overlooked, the escalating Israel-Iran conflict and its profound threat to Africa's peace and stability. This isn't just a Middle East issue. It's a global crisis with Africa caught in the crossfire. As tensions between Israel and Iran spiral closer to war, the ripple effects could destabilize economies, fuel violence, and undermine security across our continent. Stay with us as we unpack why Traoré's call to Africa, "Wake up," is more than a warning. It's a rallying cry for unity, vigilance, and action. To understand the weight of Ibrahim Traoré's urgent call to Africa, we must first confront the stark realities of the Israel-Iran conflict, a battle that is far more than a regional dispute. It is a clash of deep-rooted ideologies, historical wounds, and geopolitical power struggles that could ignite a global crisis. For decades, Israel and Iran have stood on opposite ends of a tense and volatile divide. Israel, a nation forged from resilience and survival, insists on protecting its existence in a region where many see it as an illegitimate presence. Iran, on the other hand, under a revolutionary government, rejects Israel's right to exist and aggressively supports armed groups that seek to challenge and dismantle Israeli influence. This is not just political rivalry, it's a battle over identity, sovereignty, and the future direction of the Middle East. Recent years have seen this simmering hostility escalate dangerously, with cyber attacks, targeted killings, and proxy battles unfolding in shadows and streets alike. Both sides have sharpened their military arsenals and hardened their resolve. The prospect of a full-scale war now looms larger than ever, threatening not only to devastate the Middle East, but to send shockwaves across the entire world. This conflict is no longer contained within borders. It touches the global economy, energy security, and international alliances. And as the tension intensifies, the risk of innocent lives being caught in the crossfire grows exponentially. Understanding this conflict's complexity is critical, especially for Africa. Why? Because the fallout from this war won't respect continents or oceans. Ibrahim Traoré's message is clear. Africa cannot afford to be complacent or divided in the face of these distant fires. The flames of war in the Middle East could very well leap across the globe, and Africa must prepare to defend its future with unity, vigilance, and strength. This is the reality we must confront today, with eyes wide open and hearts resolute. Africa often feels worlds away from the fiery tensions between Israel and Iran. Yet the truth is that this conflict is not a distant thunderstorm, but a looming hurricane threatening to batter our very shores. The world today is interconnected in ways our ancestors could scarcely imagine. What happens in one corner of the globe rarely stays confined there, especially when it involves powerful nations locked in conflict. Africa's vulnerability to the Israel-Iran war is not a matter of speculation. It is an undeniable reality born from our continent's strategic importance and fragile position in global affairs. Our lands are rich in resources coveted by global powers: oil, minerals, precious metals, and these resources have long made Africa a stage where international rivalries play out through economic pressure, political influence, and sometimes violent proxy conflicts. Our economies are often intertwined with foreign investments and trade routes that run through volatile regions, including the Middle East. When war breaks out there, it disrupts not only the flow of goods and energy, but also the delicate balance of diplomacy and security on which many African nations rely. The oil and gas that fuel industries and power homes across Africa come largely from or through the Middle East. Any escalation in conflict can lead to spikes in prices, supply shortages, and economic turmoil that hits the poorest, hardest, deepening inequality and instability. Beyond economics, Africa's security landscape is already precarious. Several regions are grappling with insurgencies, terrorism, and fragile governance, conditions that foreign conflicts often exacerbate. Ibrahim Traoré knows this all too well. Burkina Faso is fighting its own battles with jihadist groups whose strength and tactics have been emboldened by foreign interference and regional chaos. His warning is not just political rhetoric, it is a clarion call rooted in experience and urgency. Africa cannot afford to be passive or divided. The Israel-Iran conflict threatens to become a catalyst that worsens existing challenges and drags us into proxy wars that are not ours to fight. This is a moment for Africa to recognize its own vulnerability and, more importantly, to awaken to the power of unity and self-determination. We must understand that what happens thousands of miles away can and will affect our people, our peace, and our future. This is why Africa must pay attention, stand strong, and act decisively, not as fragmented nations, but as one unstoppable continent. Ibrahim Traoré is not just another African leader issuing routine statements. He is a voice of urgency and courage echoing across the continent, a man who speaks with the weight of experience and the vision of a leader determined to protect Africa's future. His warning about the dangers of the Israel-Iran conflict is more than political rhetoric. It's a wake-up call rooted in hard realities. Traoré understands, perhaps better than most, how external conflicts can invade African lives, not as abstract news stories, but as destructive forces tearing communities apart. In his own words, Traoré has said, Africa cannot afford to be a playground for foreign powers conflicts. The war between Israel and Iran threatens to undo years of fragile progress on our continent. This powerful statement cuts to the core of the matter. Africa's hard-won gains in peace, development, and stability are fragile and vulnerable to the violent storms brewing far away. Traoré's leadership reflects a deep commitment to African sovereignty. He does not merely warn of dangers. He challenges African nations to unite and reclaim control over their destiny. His voice resonates because he is not speaking from a distant podium, but from a nation on the front lines of jihadist violence, a violence often fueled by complex webs of international influence, some linked indirectly to broader global conflicts like the Israel-Iran war. He has called for African countries to strengthen their defense and intelligence capabilities, to share information, and to form a united front that rejects being used as pawns in foreign power struggles. This is a call to action, a demand that Africa wake up from the slumber of complacency and divisions that have too often weakened it. Beyond his direct quotes, Traoré's very leadership symbolizes hope for a new African paradigm, one that refuses to accept external interference and is ready to stand boldly in the global arena. His warning reminds us that peace is not guaranteed and that we must be vigilant and proactive. The Israel-Iran conflict is not just a distant fire, it is a blaze that threatens to spread to African soil if ignored. Through his words and deeds, Ibrahim Traoré urges Africa to see this threat clearly, to act decisively, and to build a future where African nations are architects of their own peace and security. The Sahel region of Africa is a vast and fragile expanse stretching like a belt across the continent, from Senegal in the west to Sudan in the east. It is often described as the front line of Africa's struggle against instability, terrorism, and poverty. But beyond its immediate challenges, the Sahel represents a powerful symbol, a microcosm of the dangers that Ibrahim Traoré warns about when he speaks of the potential fallout from the Israel-Iran conflict. This region is not just geographically vulnerable, it is politically and socially fragile, making it a perfect storm waiting to happen if external conflicts spiral out of control. Burkina Faso, Traoré's homeland, lies at the heart of the Sahel and has experienced firsthand the brutal consequences of instability. For years, jihadist insurgencies have spread like wildfire across the region, fueled by a toxic mix of weak governance, economic despair, and foreign interference. These groups thrive in the chaos, and their networks are often connected to international conflicts and interests. The Sahel's porous borders and vast ungoverned spaces create fertile ground for armed groups to grow stronger and more violent. As the Israel-Iran conflict escalates, the risk that proxy groups with ties to the Middle East will increase their influence in the Sahel grows as well. Weapons, funding, and ideology could flow more freely, turning this already troubled region into a deeper quagmire of violence and suffering. Ibrahim Traoré's leadership in Burkina Faso is a beacon of resilience amid this chaos. His call for African unity and vigilance is not theoretical. It comes from the trenches of a battle for survival. The Sahel exemplifies what happens when Africa becomes a chessboard for foreign powers. Communities destroyed, families displaced, and hope shattered. Yet it also shows what can be done when Africans take their destiny into their own hands. The Sahel must not be seen merely as a problem, but as a warning and a call to action for the entire continent. The dangers that manifest here today could easily spread tomorrow if Africa does not heed Traoré's warning and prepare itself. This is why the Sahel is more than a region in crisis. It is the living proof of the urgency to act before the conflict in the Middle East consumes more of Africa's future. When we talk about wars and conflicts on the other side of the world, it's easy to think they only affect the countries directly involved. But the truth is, the Israel-Iran war threatens to shake the very foundations of Africa's economies and societies in profound and painful ways. Africa's ties to the Middle East are woven into the fabric of everyday life, from the fuel that powers our industries to the trade routes that deliver goods to our markets. A conflict of this magnitude doesn't just stay confined to battlefields. It reverberates through every household, every business, and every community. So when Ibrahim Traoré raises his voice, warning of the dangers ahead, he is not speaking about distant political chess moves. He is talking about the very real possibility that the lives of millions of Africans will be thrown into uncertainty and hardship. Energy is the lifeblood of modern economies, and much of Africa depends heavily on oil and gas imports from the Middle East. A war that disrupts these supplies will send prices soaring, creating a domino effect that will hit fuel costs, transportation, manufacturing, and food production. For ordinary people, this means higher prices at the pump and in markets, making daily life a struggle for many families already living on the edge. Beyond energy, the war threatens vital maritime trade routes, including the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, arteries through which a significant portion of Africa's imports and exports flow. Any blockage or military escalation along these corridors could choke African economies, halting exports like minerals, agricultural products, and manufactured goods, while making essential imports scarcer and more expensive. Socially, the impacts could be equally devastating. Conflict breeds instability, and instability breeds suffering. The fragile progress made in education, healthcare, and infrastructure can be easily undone when governments divert resources to security or face economic crises. Refugee flows, internal displacement, and humanitarian emergencies could increase as instability spreads. Youth unemployment and poverty, already critical challenges, could deepen, fueling frustration and unrest. Ibrahim Traoré's call to action is a plea to recognize that the Israel-Iran war is not a remote crisis. It is a storm heading straight for African shores, threatening to undo years of hope and progress. The only way to safeguard Africa's future is through unity, resilience, and strategic foresight, a lesson that every African must embrace. In the face of looming chaos and global uncertainty, Ibrahim Traoré's message is not one of despair, but of determined hope, a clarion call for Africa to rise, unite, and seize control of its destiny. He challenges the continent to stop being passive spectators in global conflicts that threaten its future and instead become active architects of peace and security. The Israel-Iran war is more than a distant geopolitical struggle. It is a stark reminder that Africa's survival depends on its ability to act decisively, collectively, and with unwavering resolve. Traoré's call is a bold rejection of the outdated notion that Africa is merely a pawn in the hands of foreign powers, destined to suffer the consequences of wars it did not start. Instead, he envisions an Africa that stands tall, sovereign, and strong, prepared to defend its people, interests, and values. Traoré urges African leaders to come together with a shared vision, forging alliances that transcend national borders and political differences. He envisions a continent united not just in rhetoric, but in concrete actions, strengthening defense cooperation, sharing intelligence, and coordinating diplomatic efforts to safeguard African interests in a turbulent world. This is a call to build institutions that can withstand external pressures and prevent the continent from becoming a battlefield for proxy wars. His vision is rooted in the belief that African unity is the continent's greatest strength, a strength that can protect its people from the spillover of conflicts like the Israel-Iran war and create a foundation for lasting peace. Beyond governments, Traoré's call reaches every African citizen. It is a rallying cry for awareness, education, and engagement. He asks Africans to demand leadership that prioritizes sovereignty and peace, to reject divisions that weaken collective power, and to stand firm against external forces seeking to exploit the continent's vulnerabilities. This moment calls for courage, clarity, and commitment. Africa's future is not written by others. It is shaped by the actions taken today. Traoré's call to action is more than a political message. It is a powerful motivation for every African to awaken, unite, and take their rightful place in shaping a peaceful, prosperous continent free from the shadows of distant wars. This is not just a moment for leaders or politicians. It is a moment for every African soul to awaken to the reality that our future is in our hands. Ibrahim Traoré's urgent warnings resonate because they speak to a deeper truth. Peace and prosperity are not gifts to be awaited passively, but battles to be fought with conviction, unity, and awareness. For too long, Africa has been treated as a bystander, an afterthought in global power plays, and a victim of conflicts far beyond its borders. But the time has come to break that cycle. This is a call to every African to reflect deeply on what it means to belong to this great continent at this critical juncture. What legacy do we want to leave? What future do we want for our children? These questions demand answers not just from governments, but from every individual who calls Africa home. Engagement is the key. It starts with knowledge, understanding the complexities of conflicts like the Israel-Iran war, and recognizing how they ripple into our daily lives. It grows through dialogue, breaking the silence, speaking truth to power, and holding leaders accountable to the promise of protecting African sovereignty. It thrives in action, whether through grassroots movements, peaceful advocacy, or supporting initiatives that strengthen African unity and resilience. Traoré's message is a reminder that real change begins with the people, that no leader can succeed without the collective will and vigilance of the citizens they serve. In this moment of uncertainty, fear, and possibility, every African has a role to play. The Israel-Iran conflict may seem distant, but its impact will touch our homes, our economies, and our peace unless we choose to act. This is not a time for division or despair. It is a time for courage, for standing together, and for reclaiming the narrative of Africa's future. Let us answer Ibrahim Traoré's call, not just with words, but with hearts and hands united. Together, we can build an Africa that stands strong against the storms of conflict, that nurtures peace, and that shines as a beacon of hope and resilience for the entire world. Thank you for watching and standing with us as we unpack one of the most urgent challenges facing Africa today. Ibrahim Traoré's warning is clear. The Israel-Iran conflict is not a distant headline. It's a looming storm that threatens our peace, prosperity, and future. But within this challenge lies a powerful opportunity for Africa to rise united, to reclaim its sovereignty, and to shape its own destiny. Now is the time for every African, leader and citizen alike, to wake up, come together, and act with courage and conviction. If we stand strong, we can turn this moment of crisis into a turning point for peace and progress across our continent.